Hello everyone and welcome back to Aman Talks NRL SuperCoach, here to preview round 10 of the 2025 season. Good to see so many of you already in the chat as always. Keen to talk and get stuck into round 10. Pretty, overall quiet TLT, but there were a few big inclusions. Jaden Campbell probably being the biggest one. I know a lot of people have held on to him. I think he's like 6% owned. Good point of difference now, I think, for people who have held him, coming back 2 weeks early. His Titans teammate, Dave Fifita, out indefinitely. A few changes happening there. Thomas Jenkins at number 17. There were a few relevant TLT updates, as they generally are, but it does feel a week, despite it being the trade targets in previous stream, where trade targets aren't necessarily outstanding, but there are some good ones that we will obviously get our teeth stuck into. But just want to quickly say hello to a few people in the chat. Martin Lau, who's been one of the most generous people I've ever met in the last 2 weeks. Good evening, Martin. Hope you had the hair slicked back again for the fans. I think this is adequately slicked back, hopefully, for you, Martin. Kind of stuck between picking up Fletcher Sharp, Fermor, or Herbie. If I don't get Fermor now, I won't get him at all. Other two will be in. We'll definitely talk about gun centers in this stream and Fletcher Sharp as well. So we'll definitely answer that question in a little bit. Hello, Ben McGregor, Psalms, HM, Lachlan, Martin P, Lee, Jason Yang. You should do a live SC show. I'd pay top dollar just to see you live. I don't think I'm that impressive. Am I sure? Not that impressive live anyway, but I'll need like a nice big studio set up for that, which I don't have. I've got my spare bedroom in my house to do that. Farnworth of Garrick is King Tongia, a risky bias is Tool Pro, and Elijah as well. Brad Eady, R2 Rusty as always, Nick, Mr. Callio. Good to see a few familiar names in the chat. But I do want to try to wrap the stream up a little bit quicker today. I've been going on a little bit longer the last couple of weeks, so I will try to get this all wrapped up by about an hour 10, hour 15. So without further ado, we'll get into the thick of things, and then we'll hopefully try to speed through the topics and get most of your questions answered. Last week for me, I scored 15.54 in the end after updates, mainly because of Kuraz. He went up massively with a try assist added to his score, and Tino also went up. So in the end, it was any week, 15.54, you'd be thinking, wow, massive green arrows. I went up 181 spots. So pretty small green arrow, but it was a green arrow, thankfully. Still sitting overall rank at 1281, which is a good start to the season. Very happy with that rank to start off with. I was a little bit higher a few weeks ago, hopefully just keep kind of pressing ahead. How did I go this week, Paul? As you can see on the screen, 15.54. Season rank at the moment, 1,281. So pretty happy with that start. But I've been burning a lot of trades. Don't have any boosts left, so I think I do need to have some time soon, just to save at least 1 or 2 trades here and there. But it's a bit tough as we get into the origin period. We're going to be trading out maybe potentially oranging guns and also bringing in players to cover the buys. But very quickly on TLT itself. We spoke already a little bit about some of those key things, but Jaden Campbell being back was one of the bigger ones. I think for the Rabbitohs, obviously some outs with Peter Mamazelis with a dislocated elbow, but Latrell and Jamie Humphries are both back. I think those are very big ins for the Rabbitohs and probably will make them a bit more resilient, I'd expect, just better overall compared to last week where they were, obviously had so many big outs. And also SuperCoach relevant is Lockie Hubner starting at 13. Very keen to see that. I didn't trade Hubner last week. When he's been starting the season, he's kind of been averaging around 50s. So happy to see how that plays out for a week. Raiders are 1-17 as it currently stands, but TBC on what happens with Corey Horsburgh, Category 1, not Category 1, drinking beers after the game with the Category 1. A lot of things going on there, but just keep an eye on that one. And Matt Burton is also back for the Dogs. King Tongia does retain his spot for the Dragons, and DWZ is also back for the Warriors. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck is also on the extended bench for the Warriors, so he may be returning either this week, potentially, or next week. For Panthers, a few meaningful things with Brian To'o returning. Luke Garner was very good last week, so that's seen him at the moment keep his center spot, and Jenkins is at 17. I wouldn't be completely surprised if Jenkins potentially just comes back into that center spot with Garner on the bench. I believe that's how it was the last time that Brian To'o played and we saw this current backline. But as it currently stands, Jenkins at 17 isn't great. He had a very low break even of 1, but that's going to hamper his cash gen if he comes off the bench for maybe like a 15-20 minute stint. Nothing happening at the Storm 117. That does mean though that Harry Grant isn't back yet. And Jason Saab and Jake Trbojevic are also back from Manly. Those are some of the kind of main updates, I guess, from a SuperCoach point of view. Just wanted to quickly go through that. And obviously those who've held Jaden Campbell, you'd be really happy and pretty pleased with his early return. Some people are saying maybe it's too early, but look, I'm not a physio. I haven't seen how Jaden Campbell's been going at practice. So if he's been named to play, he's, I'm assuming, available and fit to play. But yeah, that's some of the TLT highlights. Getting on to the hot topics. So in terms of the most pressing topic that people seem to be voting on in the chat, Jackson Purdue, hold or sell, who are the best centre wings? I'm already seeing a lot of questions around Fletcher Sharp, Ruben Garrick, Beau Fermor. So yeah, we'll definitely get into that first. After that, we're looking at hooker and halfback options. I know some people, like myself included, have got Connor Watson and maybe Sandon Smith, so you don't have a dummy half this week. Or Peter Mamazelis is out and you're looking at moving him on. So who are the guys that you can maybe look at hooker, which is a pretty barren position. Then we'll talk a little bit about fullbacks. Also should note that with the Bulldogs team lists, Jacob Preston has been currently named, but he is fighting at the judiciary today a crusher tackle charge, which, because of previous offences tallying up against him, he was given a 3-match suspension. He's challenging it. If he wins, he's clear to play, but if not, then he misses 4 games. So we'll talk about back rows just in case people do need to sell Preston in the end, and maybe who are the the second row forwards that you can look to. And then we'll talk a little bit about fullbacks with Gutherson. I know a lot of people are still holding Gutherson. What do you do with him? Who do you move to? All of that good stuff. But yes, Tua Press says, massive hooker problem. I have both Sandon Smith and Mamazelis. I think a lot of people are going to be in that position. So we'll talk about that for sure. Before all of that, though, I did very quickly want to talk about Origin because it is coming up closer and closer. And just general trade advice. If you're trading in guys who are potentially on the cusp of Origin selection, yes, you might miss out on some points and potentially some cash rises up until then. But my general advice is ideally, if you can wait on trading in any Origin players or guys who might play Origin, ideally, I think you wait until round 12 if you can afford to, just because you just never quite know who's going to get picked. Laurie Daly is a new coach for New South Wales, not overall, but coming off Madge Maguire, he might have different thoughts about the team selection. Billy Slater might have a few guys that he's also thinking of. Beau Fermor comes to mind as well. So that's some general advice. And I think the main thing from a Supercoach point of view, I think we're all pretty well versed now with who covers the major and mini bye weeks. What instead I think is probably more relevant is what gun players do you sell and which ones do you hold on to, because that's going to form a lot of your trade plans. If you're thinking, oh, Nico Hines, I'm looking at him as a trade option this week. Maybe you don't need to get him this week because you might think, okay, actually next week in round 11, someone like a Nathan Cleary, could be a sell. So I will quickly talk about this just before I get into all of those topics, because that is pretty key when it comes to your future trade planning. So I know I didn't put it as a topic, but I wanted to cover it first before we got into all of that stuff. So yeah, on the Origin period and which guns to sell. So what you can see on screen here is every team's buy schedule from rounds 12 to 19. And what I've got next to that is a list of a few of the potential, maybe the dead cert Origin players and maybe some of the potential ones. And if those players got selected, how many games would they miss as a minimum during the Origin period? And therefore my kind of rough verdict on would I hold or would I be selling. So I'll go quickly team by team, just probably to be most comprehensive. So Brisbane Broncos, number 1, so they miss round 12 and 15 anyway. So the only extra game that Origin players are going to be missing out on is round 18 against the Bulldogs. So players like Payne Haas, Pat Carrigan, who are pretty much going to be certain for playing Origin, they only miss 1 extra game if you assume that they back up from all of their games. Now, what another thing I will show on screen in the next slide. So just bear with me. I'm going to be jumping back and forth between these two slides. Is I put this together. I actually put a bit of a write-up over on Patreon. You do need to be a paid member to see this particular post, but effectively, this is the graphic I had put up there with some of my thoughts. What this is looking at is teams and the number of rest days they have after each Origin game. So which teams play on the Friday, which play on the Saturday, and which play on the Sunday. It's all kind of summarized in this one graphic. And so this is looking at the mini bye weeks, 13, 16, and 19. So first looking at the Broncos, they're pretty okay in terms of recovery period. So they play on the Saturday after game 1, and then they play on the Sundays after both game 2 and game 3. Now, they're already missing round 12 and 15, the Origin players. So the only other extra game we're looking at was 18, and I think round 13, they have a 2-day backup, but it's against the Sharks. Fairly tough matchup. I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Payne Haas, Pat Carrigan played, but maybe lower minutes. I might have to double check my graphic because I've got them playing the Sharks again in round 16. I'll double check that one. But that's a 3-day turnaround. And then, and that's at home in Brisbane. One thing to note as well with Game 2 State of Origin is that game is played in Perth. So we'll talk about that when you talk about Penrith, because they've got a trip to New Zealand in the mini bye week, round 16. And then round 19, Broncos play the Titans after a 3-day rest. Another thing as well, just overall, I've heard players mention this. Some of them do prefer actually a shorter turnaround to back up from Origin, because once they get to the Sunday, it can be a bit more difficult to back up. They're a bit more sore in general. So take all of this with a grain of salt as well. This doesn't mean if you have 3 days rest, you're a dead certainty to back up. And if you have 1 or 2 days, you're definitely not. It's not exact science. There's going to be other factors coming into it, injury history of the players. I would think that round 19, your Broncos players will probably miss out, because I do find that after the end of the whole Origin schedule or period is when a lot of teams do rest their Origin players, just to give them a bit of a break and get them a bit more fresh for the run home. And given the matchups against the Titans, you'd expect the Broncos can win probably without their Origin stars. Broncos players who play Origin will probably miss round 19. So, keeping that in mind, I have a feeling that the Broncos Origin players will miss 12, 15, 18, and 19. So that's 4 games. So you can maybe hold, you can maybe sell. Someone like a Payne Haas, I'd probably be happy to hold on to if I could, just because we know that he's currently the highest averaging player when it comes to SuperCoach. So we know that he's been an absolute gun so far this year. So that's one thing on the Broncos. Bulldogs, we've spoken about this a little bit already. If you're looking at a Carraz, for Origin players, it's not good, their schedule, because they miss out already round 13, 16. Origin players would miss out 12 and 15 and 18, in addition to 13, 16. So they would miss a minimum of 5 games. So I've got Burton in question marks. Carraz potentially is a person there. Stephen Crichton, he would have been a good pod with his goal kicking, but I think any Origin players who play for Bulldogs would be definite sells in my eyes. Next up would be Canberra. So Canberra are missing round 15 already and round 18. Now they're, what's relevant here is probably someone like a Corey Horsburgh, who we'll speak a bit in more detail. Actually, we'll talk about Corey Horsburgh just now. Some people are looking at selling him already this week. I'm personally trying to wait until round 12, because if he doesn't play Origin in the end, he actually has got pretty good bye schedule. He covers 12, 13, covers 18 as well. But if he plays Origin, he will miss out round 12 and, miss out round 15, miss out round 18, and then also miss out round 19. So that's 4 games as a minimum he'd be missing. He's already had a bit of a decline in his minutes, so he'd be someone I'd say, yeah, you know what, I'm selling. So with him, I'm trying to wait until round 12 just to see if he gets selected. If he does, then I think he'll be a sell for me in round 12. I don't mind people jumping the gun early if he's a ticket to like a gun like Dylan Lucas. But yeah, that's my general thoughts on him. Dolphins players who play Origin, really no one SuperCoach relevant apart from like a Hamiso Tabuai Fido. They would be a sell in my opinion as well, because they would miss 12, 13, 15, and 18 as a minimum. So they'll be missing at 4 games, probably selling. Titans is interesting because, people are looking at Beau Fermor, not quite sure if they should be trading him in because of the Origin risk. And even like a Tino. So they actually have a pretty good schedule when it comes to Origin players. So they're already going to miss round 12 and they're already missing round 18. The only extra game they'd be missing would be round 15. So that's only 1 extra game. And in terms of their backups, so the Titans in round 16 have got a 3-day turnaround as well after game 3, and a 2-game turnaround after the game 1. But that game is against Melbourne. They're going to want to play their gun stars, and I think someone like a Tino, he's one of those guys who I think he traditionally has backed up. He's a bit of a machine, so I would think Tino, you're only going to miss actually probably round 15 as an extra game. So for me, he's probably someone I'll be holding, I think, during the Origin period. And if you're looking at already at Beau Fermor, most likely he's probably going to get at best a bench spot for Queensland. So he's not going to be playing big minutes anyway in Origin. He would only be missing that extra round 15. And I think he'll be backing up after all of those Origin games. So I think if you're really set on Fermor, don't worry so much about him potentially playing Origin, because I think it's only 1 extra game that you'll be missing out on. Let's see very quickly. Melbourne. So Melbourne up next. They're in the same boat for me as Titans players where they only miss one extra game due to playing Origin. The difference with Melbourne is that the games that they could be backing up would be Titans. So looking at their mini bye weeks, Titans, Rabbitohs, and Knights. There is always a question mark that the Storm, they've got good depth. Munster could easily rest. They've got Wishart as backup. Grant could rest. They've got Bronson Garlick as backup. So Melbourne, I'm a little bit uncertain at the time being if I would hold or sell some of their Origin players. I think someone like a Munster, I'd be okay selling, I think, because you can go maybe to a Jaden Campbell during the bye period. And Melbourne have got 2-day turnarounds after each Origin game. So their turnaround is also slightly shorter as well. So someone like a Grant, who's coming off an injury, could also be someone who we don't look at maybe throughout the entire Origin period. And Munster could be someone I think you'd be okay selling. Manly is interesting because I know some people are looking at Turbo and also Homoli Olukwatu. Again, another reason why I don't want to, if I can, trade in guys who are potentially on the cusp of playing Origin, because Manly would be a team where their Origin players, I don't think you can hold on to, because they would miss round 12, round 15, round 16, round 18, and round 19. They'd be missing a minimum of, 4 games. And someone like Turbo could easily rest after their Origin games. In terms of their backups, they've got the bye in round 16, and they've got a 2-day turnaround after round 13 after State of Origin game 1. So a slightly shorter turnaround as well. So for me, Origin players you definitely would be selling, which is why I know some people are taking a bit of a pod shout on Turbo, maybe going Olukwatu. I'd be avoiding them for the time being. If they play round 12, or if they're not playing Origin, then I think you can get, because they've actually got pretty good bye cover. Knights, I think Kalen Ponga, despite him only missing probably extra games as round 12 and round 15, with someone like a Ponga, I think they'd be very careful with him and wouldn't necessarily force to back him up. So I think he would be someone I wouldn't be keen on holding during the Origin period. Cowboys, not too many relevant Supercoach Origin players apart from maybe like Ruben Cotter, but even then still I think I'm probably going to skip over them. Same with the Warriors, not too many Origin Supercoach relevant players. For Parramatta, it'd be someone like a Moses, but even then, I think Moses will just back up for the Eels if he plays, because he's just too important for that team. Now, Penrith. So Penrith are really, really interesting. So also, I'll get to the chat very quickly. I know there's lots of comments coming in, but I wanted to get through all of this comprehensively, and then we'll take questions after. So yeah, Penrith is where things get a little bit interesting, and I've been thinking about this as well, because obviously Cleary, I think, is about 97% owned in the top 10% of coaches. And Penrith Origin players would miss round 12, round 15, and 18 as a minimum. So just the 3 games. But the complexity is that round 13, having a quick look at it here, they play Parramatta. So again, not that difficult of a game. Difference being this year though, they're not in that cozy position. They need to keep winning games, and it's a 3-day turnaround. So my suspicion would be someone like Cleary, Isaiah Yeo, Dylan Edwards, most likely probably back up round 13, because it's a winnable game against Parramatta, and it's also a 3-day turnaround. Now, the tricky one is mini by round 16, because they have an away trip to New Zealand coming from Perth, and they've got a 2-day turnaround on the Saturday from Wednesday. That does feel like a game where I think Origin players will probably miss out. And then again, round 19, 3-day turnaround to Parramatta, which I suspect is just going to be at CommBank. It's a winnable game, but I'm always a bit more concerned with the very last mini bye round at the very end of the Origin period. Historically, I think Penrith do rest their Origin players. So if I take all of that into account for Penrith, let's just focus on Cleary, because I think he's the main one. I think he'd miss round 12, round 15, round 16, round 18, and a very good chance of round 19. So I think there's at least 4, if not 5 games that he'll be missing in this kind of 8-week stretch. I think then that, and the fact that they also miss round 11, we should factor that in as well. Penrith have the bye next week. Cleary probably, for me, does become someone I think you can move on during the Origin period. Someone like Nicho Hynes, Jerome Hughes are probably going to be your best bets. Next up is the Sharks. Not too relevant as well from an Origin point of view, so I'll probably just skip over them. My general assessment was that any Origin players for the Sharks, you'd probably sell. Similar with the Dragons, only Val Holmes probably being the only relevant one. I spoke about that, I think, on the Sunday stream. Val's someone you can probably pick up early in round 17, but apart from that, he would miss round 12, he'd miss round 15, he'd miss round 16 and round 18. So again, he's probably not going to be a center gun that I think a lot of people are going to be buying. But I think Val is someone who would be backing up. For the Rabbitohs, you've got like a Latrell. Again, they missed round 12. He'd miss round 15. He'd miss round 18. And he'd also miss round 19. Doesn't feel like someone I'd be happy holding, I think, during that period when you've got so many other good fullbacks with better availability. Roosters, we've spoken a lot about them, and the relevance here is someone like Connor Watson and Tedesco. If they play Origin, they're going to be sells, or they're going to be missing so many games. They'll miss 12, 14, 15, 17, 18. There's at least 5 games they'll be missing out on. So again, I know Teddy's on the bye this week, but part of my reasoning for not getting Teddy last week was that if there's a chance he plays Origin, he's just not going to be a hold during this period of time. And then the Tigers, the only irrelevant Origin players are probably like a Luai, but again, not that highly owned. So that's going through every single team and my kind of general assessment on their Origin players being hold or sells. So hopefully that all was helpful. I'll just quickly see some comments in the chat just to see if there's anything relevant. Also, congrats, Harrison. I can see your comment from earlier. Currently sitting 5th overall. That is amazing. Good stuff. And yeah, A2D2 says, do you think Origin players back up this year? The comp is very close. Yeah, the competition is close, and I think compared to previous years where Penrith have been in very good positions generally on the table, they're not this year. So I think there's a greater likelihood that their players will back up. But as I said before, I think that round 16 one is going to be very tough. You know, going all the way to the New Zealand from Perth. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on some of them. Aman doesn't give a F about going head-to-head with NRL 360. Yeah, look, I don't think I'd be getting the same audience numbers that as NRL 360. But yeah, that's kind of... Terrell May, Edward made a good point. Let's talk about him very quickly. I probably brushed over him. So yeah, someone like a Terrell May, if we think he plays Origin, he'd be missing round 12, 15, and 18. He was already missing 12 and 15 anyway. So again, just the extra game. I think he feels like a bit of a hold because, actually, let's just quickly look at the West Tigers backup periods. Okay, this is something I wanted to quickly see. Yeah, so the West Tigers have got a 2-day turnaround after game 1, 1-day turnaround after game 2, and then 3 days after game 3. So if there's any game that Terrell May misses, it could be that mini buy in round 16. But again, is it just fair to say that Terrell May is just built different? Like, he's like Payne Haas. He might not play 70 minutes. That's the thing. He's probably not going to be playing his 70 minutes. He might be playing 50 minutes for the Tigers, maybe 30, 40 minutes in Origin. Now, say that's 90 minutes within a week. It's not that far off him playing 80 minutes in one week. So we could just see the minutes scale back a little bit. But yeah, him and Payne Haas, it does feel... I think you can sell one of the two. If I had to sell one of the two, it would probably be Haas. I just feel like the Broncos can afford to rest someone like Payne Haas more than the West Tigers could rest Terrell May. Terrell May would probably be someone I would ideally hold, but you can't hold everyone. That's the thing. You can't hold Payne Haas, Cleary, Terrell May, Munster, Corey Horsburgh, all these potential Origin players. So out of Payne Haas and Terrell May, I think May I'd likely hold on to more. Eventually, you're going to want all of those guys back, and you just need to be conscious as well of how many trades that you're using. As Holden says, yeah, he's built different. Let's be honest. Yeah, he absolutely is built different. All right, so that's all I wanted to speak about on the Origin stuff, because I know that is potentially relevant as we get into future trade plans and whatnot. But let's honor the run order poll that I had put up, and let's talk about centers and Jackson Purdue, hold or sell. So yeah, get your questions in about this if you're keen. I know some people already were earlier in the stream. Some people asking Garrick or Fletcher Sharp. So yeah, on the screen, I've just got a bunch of these gun centers: Garrick, Val, Farnworth, Carraz, Iro, Marzu, Lucas, Fletcher Sharp, and a couple of pods I've wanted to call out here: Cobbo, Brabham Best, and Connor Tracy. So, but starting off with Purdue. So I guess the biggest question is he a trade or is he a hold? So as it currently stands, I believe that Purdue is currently the most traded out player in Supercoach. Yet he's the number 1 most traded out player. And if I look at the top 5% of coaches, he still is the top most traded out player. And if I look at the top 1% of coaches, he is the top most traded out player still. So he is going to be the person that I think a lot of people are looking at cashing in. He's made like 381k, break even of 100, but a good 3-round average of 77. And apart from the first couple of weeks, he's been really looking much better. But yes, for me, Purdue is a fine hold. but I think it's completely fine to sell. And if I had to lean to one of selling or holding, it's probably for me, probably selling, I think. The reason is that I think he's made us so much money. His base power isn't as good as it is with some of these other gun centers. While his average is good for the season of 63, if you see all of these other guys that I've got on this table, barring a Cobbo, they're all guys who are averaging over 70. And he's at very similar prices to a lot of them. Like, for example, he's 60k off of Garrick. He's, 3k off of Fletcher Sharp. He's 40k off 40k off like a Lucas Marzu. He's so close in price to some of these guns who you'd absolutely would say are better long-term center wing options. Purdue does have good buy coverage. That's the one thing that he does have in his favor. But the thing is, so do all those Knights players. Guys like Garrick play all the major bye weeks as well. Farnworth plays a couple of them. Karaz, if he doesn't play Origin, is also good during the bye period. I feel like holding on just because of buys isn't enough. If he was performing at the same level as some of these other guys, then I think you'd hold. And it's not like the Cowboys draw is amazing. That's the other thing as well. Like Penrith, they have a lot of Queensland games, but Penrith, they looked good again last week. Manly's okay. West Tigers, they've been okay defensively. Melbourne, Dolphins, they're not terrible. Roosters in 16. It's only like if I look all the way from round 10 to round 19, there's probably there's probably 3 games that I'm actually scared maybe not owning Purdue. That'd be Titans in round 17, maybe the Dolphins in 15, and maybe Manly in 11. So if I'm thinking there's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If I'm thinking there's 3 out of 10 games in the next 10 weeks that I'm afraid not to own, but there's 7 that I'd be happy to take him on, then for me, that's enough to say sell. So for me, I think Purdue is completely fine sell. Probably justifies why he is the number 1 most traded out player. Just want to quickly shout out Nick Solakis here with the $20 donation. Thank you so much. That is really, really appreciated. Everyone watching the chat, give the stream a like. Mate, you're doing God's work. I don't even need to be asking for the likes. Thank you so much, Nick. Just jumped on. I have Campbell and Munster in 5.8. If LKT holds his spot, would you sell Munster for Origin period? Frees up cash for Sharp and Herbie. So yeah, I've got a bit about LKT later, but given that you've been so generous with that, I'll quickly answer that question. As we spoke about before, in terms of those Storm players during Origin, whether you hold, whether you sell, I have the Storm players as kind of a 50-50. There's no need to absolutely sell them, but as I said before, they've got good depth. There is definitely situations where they can rest their players. And with Campbell, I think just quickly looking at Jaden Campbell's buy coverage, he misses round 12, but he does play 15. He plays all the he plays all the mini bye weeks, which is very, very handy. And he's a pod. He's low owned, goal kicking. While the Titans run is not amazing, they're still a team that can score points. Munster's been a bit meh, the last few weeks. I'd be completely happy selling Munster. But Nick, if I were you, I would just wait till next week if you can. Just because I think the game against the West Tigers this week, bouncing back from a disappointing loss at home, I think I'd want to give Munster 1 more week, and then I think you can sell him next week to LKT if he keeps a spot, and I think that's completely fine. And you can run with Campbell and LKT as your 2 5/8s. So yeah, but thank you so much for that donation. That's really, really generous. But yeah, so that's my view on Purdue. In terms of the one or the centers that I'd be looking at bringing in, and I guess the order, I think the most popular trade in at the moment is Fletcher Sharp. So if I look at top trade ins by coaches ranked in the top 5%, Fletcher Sharp is number 1, Lucas is number 3, Karaz is number 6, and Garrick is number 10. So that kind of gives you some indication of where people are already looking in terms of their trade-in targets. A lot of that is also probably due to price. Purdue to Fletcher Sharp costs you like only 3K. Sharp's also got a decent break-even of I think 35. Guys like Garrick have got higher break-evens at 93. For me, I think, yes, if I'm selling Purdue, my first priority would probably be... I'm just having a quick look at the draws here just so I can really get my answer correct. If you're selling this week, I think it has to be the Knights players. Main reason is that they just don't have any buys until round 18, and this week matchup is the best. It's Gold Coast Titans and then Parramatta, and then a Penrith team without their Origin players. I think if you're selling Purdue and you're looking at a centre, to me it probably has to be a Knights player just to really target that matchup against the Titans. So I would be taking Fletcher Sharp, Lucas, and Marzu if you don't already own any of those three. Probably above your Garricks, your Carrazes, your Farnworths. I think it's purely just matchup driven, and the fact that they have no buys until round 18, which I spoke a lot about already last week, and one of the big reasons why I brought in Fletcher Sharp last week. So that would be my priority of those Knights versus the others. In terms of those particular three, how would I be ranking trading them in? For me, Lucas is probably still number one. I just think that guy he's so solid. He's got a season average of 81. His base power for the season is 64. He can get attacking stats. I just think he's going to be the most set and forget of the three all season long. The other two you might want to sell at some point if they put a run of low scores. I just don't think Lucas is ever going to give you that. For me, Lucas is probably my number one, probably the must of those three. After that, I'd be probably trading in Fletcher Sharp, a little bit cheaper than Marzu, better break even as well. I know it's chasing a little bit of points, but Sharp is looking really good. And Marzu, I think I'd put him third just because, Brad and Best can hinder him at times. Bo Fermor's not on this table, guys. I've got a section on 2RFs later where Bo Fermor does feature. I'd still take the Knights players over Bo Fermor just for what it's worth. Good thing with Fletcher Sharp, though, he's a bit of a pod, but he's going to be obviously getting mass traded in this week. But yeah, for me, Dylan Lucas number one, Sharp 2, Marzu number 3. After that, if I'm looking at Garrick, I'm going to rule out Val Holmes just because of that whole origin period. So I'm going to look at Garrick, Farnworth, Carraz, and Iro, and how I'd rank them after the Knights players. Garrick probably would be my next one, just because of decent price, and if you look at his draw as well, very, very good during the origin period. He plays all the major bye weeks. He does miss round 16 and 19 though, but as I've said kind of a few weeks ago, his actual games in those major bye weeks are really good, like Parramatta in round 12, Titans in 15, and then Rabbitohs in 18. Yeah, he will be 100% a must own in all of those major bye weeks. So I think if you're not worried so much about the break evens, like the matchup this week isn't great as well versus the Sharks, but at least it's at home. Garrick long term would probably be my next one. If you're trying to play break evens and matchups a little bit, Farnworth could be a better buy with Parramatta playing Parramatta this week. With Carraz, maybe there's some risk with him playing Origin. I think if you didn't own Garrick already, I think I would probably take Ruben Garrick. Just got a really nice set of games, doesn't have a buy until round 16. I've always kind of lent Carraz over Farnworth as well. I think like Farnworth's season base power is 60, but the last few games have been a little bit down. Like he's gotten over 70 in each game, but he's also benefited from tries. Like his base in the last 2 weeks was 37 and 31, which is still very, very good. I'm just going to quickly see what Carraz was. To be fair, Carraz was 29, so maybe I should take that back. But Carraz has shown a bit more of the ceiling. So I'm always generally a Carraz over Farnworth person, but I think this week, if you're bringing in one, get in Farnworth. He's just got the better matchup with Parramatta. He does miss round 13, which is not great, but it's just a better matchup this week. And yeah, no origin risk at all. Carraz, there's some potential origin risk. And then I'd probably get Carraz, and then I would probably get Kale Iro. So Iro's been like really solid. He scored to be fair, he scored that try last week. A lot of people thought he dropped the ball, but he would be fourth for me. I think I generally do prefer wingers or the goal kickers. That's why I've got Garrick slightly above Farnworth, Carraz, and then Iro would be next. Iro's got, it's just that the next 3 games aren't amazing matchup wise, and he also does miss round 13. So if I'm looking at him in Farnworth, I'd rank Farnworth slightly ahead just because he has a better matchup this week. And if you're looking to bring in this week, Iro's also got a fairly high break even at a 101. So that's probably how I'd be ranking some of those guns. So just to summarize, it would be the Knights players. Look, you don't have to get Marzu above a Garrick, because I think long term I do probably prefer Garrick over Marzu, but I just love the matchup this week and next week. So your Knights players, and I gave my ranking of them: Garrick, Farnworth by just touch, Carraz, and Iro. But I understand people obviously have their own subjective list, but for me that's kind of mine. The reason I haven't got Mark Nwangani-Tawasi, I can see some questions about him. He's just got the bye this week. So that's the only reason why. And he's got the Bulldogs in round 11. I think we can reassess in round 12 our Roosters players. That's the only reason why I haven't, that's the only reason why I haven't put him on here. Martin Lau is back. Thank you so much with another very generous donation at Starbucks, but can't get you anything. So here you go. Keep up the great content. You are the best, Martin. You are absolutely the best. And my large skinny flat white tomorrow will have your name written all over it. That's for sure. And Holden, I'm not going to read out your full username because I might get banned on YouTube. But thank you so much for the $10 donation. Who do you ignore of Lucas, Marzu, and Sharp and Ponga? I.e., I don't have Marzu, think I shouldn't realistically get him, as it feels like going too hard on a team that realistically has been dog water for weeks. So, yes, there was another question earlier in the chat as well about how many nights is too many. So, I think for context, I've got Marzu, Lucas, and Sharp now. So, I've got all three. I'm happy with them. I have entertained going Purdue to Ponga this week, but I think that was being a little bit too cute because I'm going to have to trade Ponga back out again if he plays Origin. I think 3 is a good number. I think 4 for the next 2 weeks is fine. If I was excluding one of Marzu, Lucas, and Fletcher Sharp out of my list, Lucas non-negotiable for me. I think he has to be in there. And then the second one, it's tough. Fletcher Sharp's average has been bolstered by that big 128. I think I would probably just about take Fletcher Sharp. I think just playing 5'8", he's a bit more involved, and I think in those bye weeks he'll play fullback, which I think will be generally good for his involvement as well. So yeah, I think just I'd pick Fletcher Sharp over Marzu. And look, don't worry about having 4 Knights players for the next couple of weeks. Most likely KP owners are going to be selling in round 12, so you're going to be going down to 3. And they're a solid team, obviously not great in attack, but good availability. Sometimes what's the quote? Sometimes the best ability is availability. Dem Clips are saying Dylan's break even is 70. Yep, it is 70. Yep. NRL Physio says the hammy reoccurrence is at its highest risk in the second week back. I think he can wait 1 more week. But he's already played 2 weeks, so remember, from his hamstring. So he played this last week was his second week back. So this coming round is his 3rd week back. I think he's fine. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about that at all if you're looking at buying Dylan Lucas. All right, a couple of pods as well is Selwyn Cobbo. Just wanted to call him out because at fullback, his numbers have actually been very good. His 2 games have had base power of 57 and 33. And he plays the Rabbitohs this week. I was originally much more keen on maybe looking at Cobbo as a bit of a pod, but with the Rabbitohs getting Jamie Humphries and Latrell back, I just feel like that game's not going to be as easy as it maybe looked last week. Then he doesn't play round 12, doesn't play 15. I think for me, Origin isn't really a concern either because I don't know if he's going to make it into that 17. I think I'll probably happily reassess maybe in round 14 when he plays the Titans, because the other thing as well is that if Reece Walsh is back I think Reece Walsh is due back in round 13, and then I think Cobbo was frustrating for people when he was playing on the wing. It's only the last couple of weeks that he's actually been good from a Supercoach point of view. So I think for me, it's just too short term in that, with Reece Walsh back at fullback, Cobbo, I think just quickly becomes not as good of an option and just conscious of having to burn trades all the time. Another couple of pods, Connor Tracy was very good on the weekend, but it did again feel like if you were keen on Connor Tracy, the week of getting the Titans was probably the week to get him. Good buy coverage, but awkward price at 582k. We haven't spoken about Bradman Best in this list either. I do generally prefer these other 3 guys though to Bradman Best, and Bradman Best is also probably closer to Origin, I guess, out of any of those 3 as well. DWZ, I know he's just come back from an injury. I wouldn't be looking at DWZ. I don't know how good of an option he's going to be in this current Warriors team. He really benefited when he had Sean Johnson just feeding him all the time. I don't think that's quite how the Warriors are set up though, so I'm not too keen on DWZ. Blaze Talangi is a bit of a shout. I think R2 Rusty is the one who shouted out. Yeah, Blaze Talangi pod option in center wing. I don't mind that. He's got a buy in round 11. That's the only thing that would maybe put me off. 563k with a break even of around 58. Maybe someone that you can look to trade in round 12. But the other thing as well is that if Cleary is not playing for the Penrith, I think Talangi is not going to be as good of an option. His base stats are okay, to be fair. The last 2 weeks, 33 and 32. Very consistent this year, 63, 58, 59, 61, and 65. But I think at his price, or just in centre in general, I think you just want these higher ceiling guys like Garrix, who's got 150. Farnworth hasn't shown it yet this season, but he's went big a few times last year. Karaz has gone big. Iro has gone close to being big as well this year. Lucas hasn't. Actually, another reason why I wanted to mention why I love Dylan Lucas is he hasn't yet had that big 100+ point score. Fletcher Sharp and Marzu have. It almost feels like those guys have had theirs. It's time for the next guy to get it, and the next guy could be Dylan Lucas. So yeah, I'm not that. Talangi's fine, but I just don't know if he's got that massive ceiling. But yeah, that's my thoughts on the center wings. So hopefully that was useful. I can't remember what the stream running order was, but all right. Next topic. Let's talk about fullbacks for a little bit. Simon saying Sharp must have. He's not a must have, but he's a very, very good pick. And he's also relevant in the fullback discussion because he is eligible to be picked at fullback. And if you're someone who's owning Clint Gutherson still, I know you've lost a lot of money now. He still has a very high break even at 125. For me, I think Fletcher Sharp is probably your best bet if you can only trade in another fullback. Because Fletcher Sharp's literally the same price as Gutherson. Gutherson's matchup, Warriors at home, Broncos away, then the bye. Then it's Newcastle, who have been okay defensively, Dolphins, who've been fine, and then the Sharks. It's just a run that I'm not that invested in. And I think we saw also last week that even with LKT in the squad and not Ilias, Gutherson still just wasn't really passing the eye test for me and getting that involved in the attack. Fletcher Sharp is an absolute jet. He's got really good base power stats as well. I think his base power average was like over 50. Gutherson to Fletcher Sharp is a good trade. If you already own Fletcher Sharp, honestly, I think in your position, it's fine to go Gutherson to KP because KP is like 100k cheaper, bank some money, hopefully get some 2 really big scores, and then in round 12, you can sell KP to whatever fullback you want. Most likely probably a Tedesco, but yeah, that would be my kind of play as well if you were wanting to sell Gutherson. Fletcher Sharp for me, number 1. Then, probably after that, maybe KP. Yeah, a couple of people in the chat asked about DWZ. I gave some quick thoughts on him. Ben Hitchcock, thank you for the $2.99 donation. That's very much appreciated. Gutherson to Sharp, a good trade. Yeah, absolutely. I'm definitely on board with that trade, Ben Hitchcock. But thank you so much for that very kind donation. And your username is hilarious. Ben Hitchcock, Arna, number 1 fan. And Nick Salakis is back. Further contribution to coffee for you. Thank you so much. You guys have been so generous today. This is amazing. Definitely want to bring in Lucas this week. Who would I trade out of Xavier Coates to Marley? Like Coates this week at Amy Park and against the Tigers. I like that matchup as well, Nick. I'm just going to quickly check what Coates' break-even is because I can't remember it from the top of my head. Break-even is 93. Honestly, I would sell Coates above Tamale. I think Tamale has really improved as a SuperCoach pick in the last few weeks. It looks like the Tigers, it looks like the Raiders are actually running more shape for him. And also his base power stats are better. He's scored tries in the last 3 weeks. Apart from the Bulldogs as well, the Raiders just have if you just check out the Raiders' long-term draw, it's very, very kind in terms of the opponents that they play. Like they play Bulldogs this week, but then they don't play Melbourne for the rest of the season. They play Penrith in round 25. They don't play the Sharks again for the rest of the year. So the teams that we'd be considering to be, good defenses, they play the Roosters in 13, but that's it. Long-term, their draw is really good. They play round 13 and 12. They play 16, which is a mini bye week. They play 18, which is a major bye round. Xavier Coates is probably playing Origin, so he's going to be missing some games. Definitely for me, I think Tamale I'd be keeping over Xavier Coates. But thank you so much again, Nick, for that donation. That's very, very kind. Any love for Suafar Longo? Yeah, I know he's been one of the more traded in players as well overall. He's not in the top 10 when it comes to coaches in the top 5%. I think he is in the more overall coaches. Yeah, he's 7th most traded in overall standpoint. That again probably shows you that the guys who are probably at the higher end of things or maybe a little bit more engaged, they're not trading for him as much, and that's because of the job security concerns. Will Warbrick is still out, but Falongo, despite him being really good, he doesn't cover round 12, so it's not like you're buying him to get like some buy coverage either. And I think his job security is quite bad. That's the only other thing as well. So I think short term, yes, maybe a bit of a cash grab, but for me, it's just the job security. I'd want to be getting in guys who I'm very certain with their role and their minutes. CNK at fullback, I haven't actually really considered Nickel Klukstad. I haven't really looked at too much of his stats as well. 37 points last week against the Cowboys, 64 the week before that. His season average is 49, so it's not been amazing. He only had that one big score against the Roosters of 115. He does play round 12 and 13, does play 16, does play 19. Just for me, fullback just seems a way better position. I'd want to be stacking better picks. But for me, Gutherson, sell. Drinkwater, is he in the top 10 most traded in players? He is not. So he's not in the top 10 most traded in players when it comes to people in the top 5%. To be fair, they're probably in the top 5% because they own Drinkwater. Drinkwater's still not in the top 10 traded in though, in the top 10%. And not in all coaches either. So Drinkwater's actually not getting that heavily traded in. He's 822k. It's probably because he's very expensive. And he doesn't play round 12. And then he's versing Penrith and Manly. It feels tough what to do with Drinky if you don't already own. Ideally, if you've got the money, Gutherson to Drinkwater I still think is a fine trade. You will want Drinkwater, I think, during the Origin period because after round 12, he doesn't miss any games during the bye period. But for me, I think Drinkwater is a very good get during that period of time, but maybe due to price, don't have to get him this week. Gutherson to Hines via flex as HUD2. I think that is a completely good trade as well. And this is the other thing as well. You don't have to stick to just buying a fullback. Someone like Nico Hines, I think is actually a really good purchase as well this week. He had a good score last week. I think he's like 648k. So he's still presenting, a good price. And that's a very easy, 663k, sorry. But that's a very easy trade to do. Gutherson to Hines, I'd actually be on board with that as well. We'll talk a bit about matchups in a bit. But I do think that Hines has actually got a good matchup this week against Manly when it comes to targeting edge defenses. Will Bennett says, is Hines a must-own during the Origin period? I wouldn't put him in must category, but I'll put him in guys who I'll be scared not to own. So I'm maybe looking at trading in Hines either this week or making plans to get him. As we said before, Cleary could be a sell even as early as next week. Cleary to Hines could be one of the more popular trades next week. But if you can go Gutherson to Hines this week, I think that's completely fine as well, at your flex position. Gutho will go huge this week back at Wynn Stadium. Look, again, you can take that chance as well and just keep him. For me, it's just eye test. He's just not quite passing it. And the Warriors are a good team as well. It's not like it's an easy beats matchup. If Gutherson was versing the Titans, maybe Parramatta, even maybe the Rabbitohs, I'd maybe say hold. But it's not like the next two matchups are that crash hot, even at home. For me, Gutherson, I still think I'd be selling. I sold Gutherson last week, and at the moment, feel pretty good about it anyway. So that would be my thoughts on Gutherson. And look, Gutherson played the Titans at home in round 6, and he scored 54 points. I don't even necessarily think it matters if he's playing at home. I think he's just someone I'd be looking at moving on. I know some people are looking at maybe Latrell, Turbo's bit of point of differences. Their break-evens are super high. So I wouldn't be trading them in. I think they still have some money to lose. And we'll talk about Tedesco maybe next week or the week after. He's on the bye this week, so obviously don't need to worry so much about him. All right, let's talk a little bit about Corey Horsburgh and some second rollers, because I know people might be losing Preston if he loses at the judiciary, and Corey Horsburgh. Gave thoughts on Corey Horsburgh at the beginning of the stream, so anyone who's joining in late, do rewind to back there and you will hear my thoughts on Horse. Overall, I kind of said that I think he's a fine sell. I'm probably going to be waiting myself until round 12 to make that decision. But he will miss some games if he does get picked for Origin. In terms of back rowers, I expressed my concerns about maybe trading in Hamoli purely from that Origin risk. For me, second row, it's pretty easy this week. I think it's Eli Katoa, 657k, a season average of 74. Apparently, he's been battling some injury issue, but still pumped out really good base power stats on the weekend. Doesn't play round 12 or 15, but it's just one of those set and forget guys for the season, and you'll be picking him up at a very good price as well. So Eli Katoa is one of the more popular trade-ins this week. So if I look at coaches in the top 5%, he's currently the 8th most traded in player. So for me, I agree with that. I think he's a very good trade-in. Number 9 is actually Britton Nickera. at 535k. I would definitely get in Katoa, I think, before I'd be getting Britain Nikora, albeit there's a massive price difference between the two. Nikora scored well last week with 70. He plays round 12, but he will miss round 13. You just need to be a bit aware of that. And while we know that Nikora can get those big attack stats, like you would have heard it on a lot of other podcasts as well, but his base stats have been down this year. Don't know if that's deliberate or not, but he hasn't based more than 46, this season. That's been his highest base stats in a game all season long. If I just quickly look back to last year, because I actually owned Nikora last year and he was really good for me, so I don't even necessarily have a problem owning a Nikora. But yeah, last year, Nikora had games where he based 51, 50, 62, 53, 54, 58. Like, he had way better base stats last year, and combine that with attacking stats as well. I think the Sharks are a good team to have during the Origin period because they're not going to be that affected by it. But yeah, for me, I think Brayley makes a good point here. The mini bye weeks are way harder to cover than the major bye weeks. I agree with that. The mini bye weeks can be very tricky. And so for me, I don't want to stack up too much on players who miss out on round 13 and round 16. So Britain Nikora will miss round 13. And the next couple of weeks are a little bit difficult as well. Although the Manly game is actually good for his edge. His break-even is still not that bad. It's 67. So even with a try, he scored 70 last week. I'm probably not rushing to get in Nikora. I just don't know if I've seen enough yet from him. If you're looking at a point of difference, I do really like Toby Couchman. So Couchman, now with the news that Emre Gula's also out for a few weeks with that dislocation. I can't remember what he dislocated. Couchman's been really good this season. He's a very safe option. It's a bit more expensive than Nikora. But his base power stats for the season have been 66, kind of a bit more of a set and forget. What's Hamoli's ownership in the top 10%? I'll see if I can quickly bring that up for you. Just bear with me for a second. Yeah, I didn't get their ownerships up on screen. But yeah, if Preston does lose, I think if Preston loses and is suspended for 4 games, you have to sell him, in my opinion. Eli Katoa would be my number 1. If you are keen on Beau Fermor, even despite the Origin risk, as we spoke about, the Titans aren't that affected. I think getting in Beau Fermor is still completely fine. We've seen, again, more attacking stats from him last week. Still has a negative 24 break-even. This probably is the last week to get him. Otherwise, his price is going to be north of 700k and probably unattainable. And just circling back on Fermor, because I know people were wondering about him in centres. I would take all those Knights players above Beau Fermor still. I'd probably still take Ruben Garrick over Beau Fermor. After that, because Karaz maybe plays Origin, because Farnworth also misses round 13, then it becomes a bit more of a question where you maybe could look at Beau Fermor. He's a bit cheaper than those two as well. But I'm not 100% sure where I'd be ranking him. I think it's fine to get him at second row though, if you're selling a Preston, or if you're even selling a Corey Horsburgh this week and going early on him. But yeah, Eli Katoa for me would be number 1. I'd probably go Fermor second, probably Couchman third. Olukwatu, if he didn't play Origin, would jump up in that rank. But I feel like he's just one of those players who, look, his break-even's 58. He might go up another 30, 40k, but I think that's enough to know whether he's going to be available for you during that Origin schedule. All right, someone else has helped me out with those ownership stats on Olukwatu. Thank you so much. Yes, you said it's 5% in... Wait, sorry. I didn't get the answer. Apologies. Let me have a quick squiz at that for you, for Olukwatu. So for second rowers, okay, I don't know why. My stats aren't showing up for me, sorry, on the SuperCoach page, so I'll have to try to get back to you on that. Fermor's average at second row forward is 80. Yeah, he's been killing it at second row. I don't know, like one of his first... I think his first try last week, he looked like he was playing centre. So it's almost like in attack he's playing centre, because what happened was it was a scrum, and then I think Brian Kelly was inside of him, and Brian Kelly passed it to Beau Fermor, who would have been playing at centre. So yeah, he's still kind of maybe during the games mixing and matching, but yeah, he's been really good season long, and very good when he plays in back row. Where would Lucas rank for you if you had him as a second row forward? To be honest, I'd probably rank him above Eli Katoa. I'm not making it very subtle, but yeah, I love Dylan Lucas as a Supercoach option. I'd be getting Dylan Lucas first. And again, that's also by schedule and Titans matchup. I don't generally do those kind of bold prediction type segments on the show, but if I had to guess any of those Knights, centers, or Supercoach options to get a ton this week, I'd be putting it on Dylan Lucas, in my opinion. Could be crazy to say, but yeah, I think that man's got 120 in him this week. Yeah, all right. Matty Nicholson, a keeper. I think Matty Nicholson is completely fine to hold on to. He's been very good. He's still playing 80 minutes. Yeah, I have no thoughts of selling Nicholson anytime soon. As I spoke about with Tamale, good long-term draw for the Raiders. They're doing very well in real-life NRL. Play round 12, play round 13, and they have the Titans round 11 as well. So yeah, definitely holding on to Nicholson. All right, let's talk a little bit about hookers, because I can see some questions on that as well. So Dem Clips are saying, yeah, don't forget McInnes as a second row forward option to swing up to hooker after round 13. So yeah, on hookers, Connor Watson, for example, on the bye this week, he's in my team. I don't love hooker options, so as it currently stands, I'm thinking of just holding him for the time being and waiting until maybe round 12 to see who I might want to sell him for, if I do want to sell him at all. I said it... Excuse me. I've said this before. McInnes would have been my pick at hooker. He's just been the most steady, safe, not boring one. And he's got the dual second row forward hooker that I like. And he scored well last week, scored 90 points. He's actually ranked 4th for trade-ins in the top 5% of coaches. So a lot of people are doing Cam McInnes in. I would suspect as well that... a lot of those trade-ins are for Connor Watson. So I'm just going to have a quick look and see if I can... Because with Supercoach Gold, you can actually see the stats around who's trading in and out. And yeah, as it currently stands, Mamazelis is the most traded player for Cam McInnes. And next after that is Connor Watson. And then it's Sanders Smith. Sanders Smith, I think, is fine to hold, by the way. He'll play during those major buy and mini buy weeks. Connor Watson won't. So I think he's fine to sell. On Mamazelis, yeah, it's probably fine to sell as well at 435k. Cam McInnes would probably be the more higher priced hooker who I would be moving to. Wade Egan, I'm just not as certain about. I know he's been good so far this year. He does play round 12. To be fair, he does play round 13 as well. But I just like McInnes' dual status. And I think McInnes is just way more stable. Season average of 62. I think his low score this season is like 50, 51. You just know what you're going to get with McInnes. So yeah, for me, McInnes would be the hooker I'd be looking at if you're upgrading Mamazelis or if you're selling a Connor Watson. On some cheapy options, so Riley Smith is probably the most popular one that people are looking at. In terms of trade-ins, he is currently the 5th most popular trade-in for coaches ranked in the top 5%. I think Riley Smith is okay. I haven't looked at it if that actually is the case, but I believe that Riley Smith and Sanders Smith interchange in terms of the games that they play during the bye period. My concern with Riley Smith, though, is that Brendan Hands was named in the reserves for the Eels. Does he potentially take minutes off of Riley Smith? And Joey Lussick. Joey Lussick is also not back. Joey Lussick is also back sometime soon. I'm just concerned that Riley Smith could become also a bit of an auto-emergency nightmare. Because I think the 2 weeks that Riley Smith played with Joey Lussick, I think he scored like 27 and 31 points. Even then, his highest score of the season was last week and he scored 50. I know he's cheap at 302k, but I don't know. It feels like he could be a bit of a plotter, and be a bit of an auto-emergency nightmare. Some people are mentioning Jazz Tavanga. Again, Lockie Croker, I think, is due back around 11 according to NRL.com. But Jazz Tavanga does have a negative break even. I believe he also has dual status as well. He's got second row forward hooker, which I like that dual status. Last couple of weeks have been good. Scores of 63 and 63. When he's played good minutes this year, he's generally been fine scoring 68 and scoring 70 points. Again, long-term job security. I don't know how good it's going to be when Lockie Croker eventually comes back. Similar with Riley Smith. I probably have a bit more confidence in Riley Smith just because I think he's going to feature in that Eels team, even with Brendan Hands and Joey Lussick back. I think he's shown enough to stay in that 17. It's just a question of minutes at that time. And another cheapie that I know some people have also shouted out to me as well is Kurt Donahue. So Kurt Donahue, I think, has been named to start this week, and this is also in the absence of Max Plath. He's 287k, break even of 27. But the problem is that Jeremy Marshall-King will come back, and that's going to see his minutes also get impacted, and he's going to be pumping at scores in the 20s and 30s. The Jazz is playing lock this week. Okay, that's a good shout, actually. And another one is Bronson Garlick, 291k. Hooker, second row forward. The good thing that I like about Bronson Garlick is that he's just kind of a natural hedge or handcuff to Harry Grant. Anytime Harry Grant is out, Bronson Garlick's going to be the one that will get the spot. For me, I think if I was trading in a cheapie, it probably would be Bronson Garlick. I wouldn't go Kurt Donahue. I think for 4k more, at least get the guy who's got the dual status. So it'd probably be Bronson Garlick, then probably Riley Smith, then maybe a Jazz Tavanga. And then if you're looking at shopping for a little bit more expensive guy, Cam McInnes would be the one I'd be looking at. Dan One, love the graphics and watch, even though I only play NRL Fantasy, mate. I think guys in the chat, we got to convert J-Rock to become a SuperCoach player. I don't want to say it's the superior fantasy format because I don't want to be creating negative debates or anything like that, but SuperCoach is pretty good. So if you like the graphics, if you like what you see, I only speak about SuperCoach and not fantasy. So get playing SuperCoach in my opinion. Corey Pakes. Will Corey Pakes gain more game time over Origin with him playing? I don't know. Maybe because Ben Hunt was playing a little bit of dummy half, but I think Corey Pakes is also still fine that you can move on. And another thing with auto emergencies, it's probably not terrible this year because you've got the flex, so any auto emergency will just naturally drop out of your 17 anyway. So again, it makes me feel a bit more okay with going someone like a Bronson Garlick, even a Riley Smith as well, if you did want to. And I don't mind just freeing up a lot of money at hooker. It's a pretty barren position as well. Api Coruscant, look, he's not goal kicking. I think without that, he's just not really an option for me this year. If he was goal kicking, it'd be different. But 34 points last week. He scored 65 and 60 before that, but he did also score 30 and 20. For me, season average of 49 is just not enough for me. And look, he is potentially an Origin risk as well. So I wouldn't be buying Coruscant if you guys are looking there. And on halfbacks, very quickly, we spoke about Cleary before. I think Hines still is a very good trade in this week. And Jerome Hughes, who I own, I wouldn't be buying Jerome Hughes. He's been battling an AC joint injury and doesn't play round 12. Maybe in round 13 is when you can look at Jerome Hughes when he plays the Titans. Honestly, it's probably just those two I'd be looking at halfback. Cherry Evans will miss games during Origin. Adam Reynolds, he's been good so far this year, to be fair, but not the best buy coverage. Hughes and Hines probably still the top two for me, and I suspect Moses will miss games as well during Origin. But I know there was a question earlier in the chat as well about Karaz or Hines as a priority trade-in. For me, if you're looking at one of the two, probably Hines, better price, and very likely won't play Origin. Karaz is maybe some risk as well. And I think Tom Starling is also a good hold. Just wanted to take that question from Tyrone Williams. Look, Starling has been playing good minutes the last few weeks, which is kind of the main thing you just want to be seeing. He had that bit of a dip, but if you look at the last 4 weeks, minutes have been 64, 62, 63, and 70. He's not a massive problem and also has good buy coverage. And after the Bulldogs, he plays the Titans, so could get attacking stats. And then he plays round 12 and 13. I definitely think I'd be holding Starling until at least 13, or even until 15. At that point, maybe you can sell and reassess. But again, sometimes the best ability is availability. He's available for you until round 15 in a pretty mid position. So yeah, for me, I'd be holding Starling. All right. I won't talk too much more about halfbacks because I want to spend some time on, we haven't even spoken about cheapies. On LKT very quickly, I think my gut says he probably will be available next week for you and will play for the Dragons. But for me, ideally, I would try to wait until next week to buy him. And just because the thing is, if he has a poor game and if Lockie Ilias has another good game in New South Wales Cup, what's to say that Lockie Ilias just comes straight back into that team, and then LKT becomes enough at 5'8". So I'm personally just waiting for a week. And on Patea from the Penrith Panthers, look, he's got a negative break even. The fans seem to want him in the team. Which is good. But yeah, minutes have been 14 and 28. It's, for me, it doesn't feel like you need to make that kind of a trade at front row, unless you're really desperate to get rid of someone like a Royce Hunt, or you want to free up cash with a Corey Horsburgh trade out. But he doesn't scream must-buy cheapie to me. LKT could be, but I think we just need to see him play another good game. And if he gets named again next week, then for sure I think we can buy LKT because he's bottom dollar. All right, I want to talk a little bit about matchups and captaincy before getting into my team. Conscious already going for an hour and 7 minutes, so I'll probably try to wrap up in the next 10 minutes. So I showed this last week, and people seem to like it, so I wanted to bring it back. This is from Stats Insider. It's their try map, which is a really, really good resource. I think it's really, this week's a little bit different, where I think because of the Roosters being on the bye, you probably don't have that many real sit-start headaches this week, but it's still good to see for matchups. And if you're looking at bringing in players this week, how do you prioritize it? So I've put the link in that for that in the chat, but some matchups that I did notice that I did like against the Parramatta Eels. Eels right edge has conceded 47% of their tries, so that looks really good for someone like a Herbie Farnworth. So I think he's a good trade in this week with a good matchup. On the Knights players, the reason why I was so hot on them, the Knights, look, in terms of scoring tries, the Knights score 58% of their tries on their left. Gold Coast Titans concede 50% of their tries on their right side. So that's the Knights left versus the Titans right. That's a really, really good matchup this week. So I think all of the Knights left edge is in for hopefully good weeks this round. So I really, really like that matchup. The Broncos edges is a good matchup against the Rabbitohs. So someone like a Cobbo if he's playing fullback, if you're looking at him as a bit of a pod. I really like the Raiders left edge against the Bulldogs. So you even saw last week that Beau Fermor playing on the left scored a double. Bulldogs have conceded 61% of their tries on their right-hand side. So I really like that for your Raiders players like Hudson Young and even a Tamale. I know the Bulldogs have been a good defense. If you can, I'd actually be very happy to play Tamale this week. Warriors in general, they concede 20% of their tries through the middle, which is slightly higher than a lot of the other teams. So again, if you're playing someone like an Egan from the Dragons, I think he's potentially got an okay matchup this week. I did say Panthers left edge attack versus the Cowboys right edge, and I had put in Jenkins, but of course now Jenkins on the bench, that isn't really relevant anymore. So unfortunately, not so good for Jenkins owners. But the Cowboys edges, I think, should hopefully have some good potential in this one versus Penrith. So again, that could be good for people who are holding on to Purdue, but it could also be good for Drinkwater. Storm left edge versus the Tigers right edge. So Tigers have conceded 50% of their tries on their right-hand side. And the Storm have also scored 43% of their tries on their left edge. They've actually scored 45% on their right as well. So Storm are really a team that do just play to their edges. Could be good for a Munster. Again, to Nick's question from earlier in the stream, I think it's a good matchup for a Munster. And then you can sell him next week to LKT if you want to. And on Hines and Britton Nickera. So Manly's left edge defense has conceded 43% of tries. That's the most in that team. So that looks good for people who are owning Nicho Hines and also maybe looking at a Britton Nickera. While the matchup doesn't scream it's very good, the particular matchup here of the edge defense, it does look good for the Cronulla Sharks in this one. And the Sharks are also very even in terms of they've scored 41% of tries on their left and also the right edge. Again, that's a good reflection as well of the kind of the role sharing that Nicho Hines and Braden Trindle have. So all of that, let's look at captaincy. So yeah, captains for this week. I've put lower a shorter list of players here in for this week. I've got Herbie. I've got all of the Knights left edge. Payne Haas, Drinkwater, Cleary, Pappenhausen, and Terrell May. If you're bringing in a Herbie Farnworth, I think that's a pretty good VC early in the round. And another thing that I've got on the screen here, I just wanted to quickly show, it's a little bit different to previous weeks. So on NRL SuperCoach Stats.com, which is the best website ever, you can actually see positions versus teams. So you can see how teams have conceded points to opposing positions, and also by PPM. So what I did was, say for example for Parramatta, if you look at the graphic below me, you can see that they concede 0.77 ppm to opposing center wings. So what I did for a projected score for Herbie was just do 80 minutes times that, and that comes out to 61.6. So that shows that Parramatta, on average this season, have conceded 62 points to opposing center wings, which is a pretty healthy average. So that looks really good for Herbie Farnworth. My preferred game though for a VC is the Knights. I just think that matchup looks too good against the Titans. In terms of Kalen Ponga, who I think will be a very popular VC option this week, the Titans have been 8th best at defending opposing fullbacks, so it's pretty much middle of the road. In terms of points though, that's an average of about 73 points. So 73 points is how much they've conceded on average to opposing fullbacks. What's probably more enticing for me though is their rank for center wings. So if you can see this here below me, Gold Coast Titans have conceded 0.85 ppm to opposing center wings. So if you're looking at an 80-minute center, someone like say a Greg Marzhew, that would be an average of 68. So that also looks quite good. For me, VC on Fletcher Sharp or Marzhew looks really tempting. You could even throw it on Dylan Lucas as well. But I think if you own KP, that's who I'd be putting my vice captain on this week. And in terms of captains, I think Payne Haas and Cleary are the ones that stand out for me this week. So when it comes to individual matchups, the Rabbitohs have actually conceded the most points to opposing, or the most PPM anyway, to opposing front row forward. And I assumed that Payne Haas played 65 minutes. So when I ran those numbers, it had him scoring about 74.8, 75. And that's an average front row forward, not Payne Haas. I think Payne Haas is an easy 85, 90 points this week as well. I think he'd be a very good captain. And if you're someone who, owns a lot of Roosters, you should be in a position to be able to do a pretty easy vice captain loop this week. So I think you can even go VC on Payne Haas and then captain on like Cleary. In terms of matchups as well, Cowboys have conceded the most PPM to opposing halfbacks. That translated to Cleary 82.4 as the average score that the Cowboys have conceded to opposing halfbacks. So I really like that matchup as well. I know it's an away game for Penrith, but Cleary showed how good of a player he is with the big score last week. I'm not overly keen on Captain Pappenhausen. I know the matchups looks good on paper, but West Tigers have actually been pretty good at defending opposing fullbacks. And Terrell May, I think Melbourne could just potentially cap his upside. I've given him about 70 points if you look at him playing 73 minutes. But Melbourne have been really good at defending opposing front row forwards this season. And Drinkwater is an option playing at home, but I think Penrith, it just feels a bit tough to go put anything on him, just with Penrith looking a lot better last week. So yeah, for me, Herbie is very good. My personal favourite for VC is Ponga, or any Knights player. If you've got the ability to loop, I'd probably lean again maybe towards Payne Haas, and then maybe a Captain Cleary as a safer option. But yeah, just seeing some thoughts from the chat here as well. Pappy or May for captain, as I have both. I think if you have both, I'd be happy. I'd probably go Pappy. What I'd probably do is VC Payne Haas. If Haas goes like 9,500, and if you've got the ability to loop, then I think you take Payne Haas's points, and then maybe I'd probably leave the captaincy on Pappy out of him or Terrell May. Marzhew VC for me this week. I think in my current setup, that's what I've got, or I've got on Payne Haas. But yeah, Marzhew VC is also a very, very good shout. Jacob Carraz's VC. Oh, sorry, 1 second. My webpage just completely died. Hopefully you guys can still hear me okay. But I don't know if I'd be going Carraz VC. Raiders, yeah, they've been pretty good at defending opposing centre wing. So yeah, probably not for me. Yeah, sorry guys. I think my stream is starting to just suffer a little bit. Hopefully you guys can hear me still okay. But yeah, my webpage just died for a second. Nick, again, thank you so much with the donation. Make it a hat trick of contributions tonight. Trading out Gutherson for Sharp and Coates for Herbie. holding Munster this week. Next week will be Jenkins to Lucas and Munster to LKT if he gets the nod. I really like that set of trades, Nick. Really, really like that. Just had to refresh. All good. Okay, cool. That's good. Yeah, Payne Haas offload is going to come out this week. He's going big. Yeah, I really like having something on Payne Haas this week. He just looks like he's, just with the matchup and the numbers here, looks like he's potentially a very good option for this week. All right, guys. Unfortunately, I'm probably not going to be able to take questions just because of time constraints. I'll very quickly just go through my team and then I'll wrap up. But yes, on my particular team this week, I've got Connor Watson and Sanders Smith at hooker. So I think as it currently stands, I think I'm just going to keep it like that and just take the free loop option. VC is currently on Payne Haas. I think I might, and captain was on Cleary. I think I'll switch it to VC Marzu and then captain Payne Haas as it currently stands. I could go VC on Sharp, but I think Marzu, I went VC Marzu last week, so why not run it back 2 weeks in a row? I'm not 100% certain about that as it currently stands, but yeah, I think a VC on a nice player makes sense. Sitting Adam Dewey against Melbourne. So my reserves at the moment are Eli Katoa, Jerome Hughes, Purdue, and Pappenhausen, and I'm actually playing Dylan Egan above Corey Horsburgh this week. In terms of trade thoughts, I think with Hubner starting, that probably means he will stay for me this week. I can actually go Hubner to LKT next week via duels if I want to, but I'll give it a week. I don't need to rush on King Tongia. So what I was originally hoping on doing this week was Purdue to Hines, but I'm 22k off of doing that move. So I could save. Otherwise, I could do someone like Purdue to Farnworth. I could, if I really wanted Nico Hines, what I'd probably do would be subbing Purdue to my flex, and I need to free up 22k somehow. In that case, I would probably just go and sell. I'd probably sell either Corey Horsburgh or Connor Watson. Actually, you know what? I've just thought of this trade. Oh, I can't make it work. I was thinking if I could go Corey Horsburgh to Nickera and Hines in for Purdue, but I'm $6,000 off. So I can't make that particular move work. I think I'll keep Horsburgh for now. What I could do is Connor Watson out and just get in someone cheap like Bronson Garlick. 298k. That gets me Nico Hines. I get rid of Purdue before his high break even. And then what I can do then, next week, round 11, Cleary, I can wait a week, or Cleary can just go to a fullback via Nico Hines. And then that's it. And then round 12, I can make other moves to get in other Origin players, maybe like a James Tedesco. So I'm not totally sold on what trades I'll be doing this week. It probably will revolve around Purdue and Watson. But again, if Connor Watson, if my vice captain goes really good, I can just use Connor Watson as a loop. I can still use Sanders Smith. Luckily, Melbourne played the last game, so even if I did go like Bronson Garlick, I can just loop Sanders Smith anyway and just bench him. But yeah, that's at the moment what I'm thinking. Not 100% certain, but yeah, have to just give my trades a little bit more thought. Weather this weekend, weather looks okay in Sydney from memory. Let me just have a quick look-see here. Yeah, Sydney looks okay. Melbourne looks very sunny, so that looks nice. Townsville is fine. Brisbane's got a bit of rain, but that's about it. So yeah, I don't think there's going to be too much wet weather. But yeah, that's some of my early trade thoughts, but not really too certain at this point in time. If you want to see my trade thoughts and final team, you can go and follow me on Patreon. That's where I do post all of this final stuff. But you guys, I'm going to have to wrap up the stream there. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. And you're all so generous today. I really, really appreciate it. Please give the stream a like if you enjoyed it. Give it a subscribe as well if you're new around here and want to see more. Apologies for that slight choppiness of the stream a little bit towards the end, but I think it was good for the majority of it, which is nice. But yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in, and good luck this week, and catch you all in the next one. Cheers.